Yes, I just did. He's got it. Hmm? Oh, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the City of Titusville Community Redevelopment Agency meeting of November 13th, 2018 at 5:30 p.m. We have a quorum. I'll call the meeting to order. And is there any minister here that would like to say an invocation? I see none, so we'll wait for the other council people to be seated. And if you would join me in a moment of silence, please. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item is approval of minutes. We have one set of minutes to approve. I have a motion.
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Okay, of October 9th, 2018. The city attorney, I know you knew Jim, and welcome. The city attorney prefers that the maker of that motion read the date off. Okay, just no problem. I have a motion. I have a second. Any other comments? All those in favor say aye. Yes?
Yes.
Any opposed, like sign? Next is special recognitions and presentations. I don't think we have any of those, do we? Or is, no, okay. Old business, no old business, new business.
Yes, sir. Agenda item 8A, commercial beautification grant. The project is located at 346 South Washington Avenue within the downtown subdistrict of the Community Redevelopment District. A beautification facade grant was awarded to the property by the CRA in February 2014 in the amount of, in your read ahead in an agenda, it says $40,000. It was pointed out to us this evening that grant was actually $20,000 for your reference, and the minutes have been provided to you. That was for stucco, replacement doors, windows, and paint, and to install a metal roof and awnings. The grant agreement was never executed, so the grant funds were not used. The applicant has reapplied and proposing the following improvements to be reimbursed with the commercial beautification grant funds. Replace the roof, replace the soffit, fascia, gutters, and downspouts, replace all windows and exterior doors, re-stucco the entire building, paint the exterior of the building with Sherwin-Williams Amazing Gray and trim with Sherwin-Williams Mindful Gray paint, install the exterior lighting, and install Bahama shutters to the second floor windows. Staff requests approval of the commercial beautification grant reimbursement funds in the amount of $40,000 to be awarded to Mr. Larry Rhodes for the improvements to the existing building located at 346 South Washington Avenue, with 75% of the grant, which is $30,000, to be paid at the project completion, and the remaining 25% of the grant, $10,000, to be paid a first year of occupancy and completion of the improvements. And staff's available to answer questions that the CRA board may have.
Okay, Clerk, I should have asked you this before, but please read the procedures for public comment.
Oh, yes, sir. The following is the procedure for public comment and participation. Individuals wishing to speak on agenda items must complete a sign-up card and present it to the clerk prior to the item being introduced. Sign-up cards are located on the table at the side of the council chamber. Individuals wishing to speak on non-agenda items may do so under petitions and requests from the public present. No sign-up card is required. Sign-up cards, are located on the table at the side of the council chamber. Citizens will be given 3 minutes to speak on all agenda items.
If somebody would like to speak on this item, as I did not say it beforehand, they can come up and fill out the card after the meeting, after would. You do have a card? Is there a card on this?
Yes, sir, Mr. Tom Altiff.
Very good. You already knew the procedures, didn't you?
Tom Oltiff, 410 South Hopkins. Good evening.
Good evening.
My concern with this grant was that I was actually here when it was proposed in 2014. And at that time, the representative for the corporate entity stated that the building was in such bad condition that it might have to be torn down, that the building needed a lot of structural work. And my question was, has that changed since then? I don't know if we should invest in a building if at some point it's going to have to come down. And that's the only reason I'm speaking on that.
I remember that, and I actually asked the same question, so I'm going to let staff answer that question.
I believe there were two owners at that time. One owner felt that there was some structural issues where the other owner didn't think the issues were as bad as the other owner thought. So one has been bought out and has come back and is proposing to fix the building up. So,
And they would have to bring everything up to code,
that's correct.
and that's the answer that I was given.
And that, I think if you see the recommendation from the Historic Board, and they have agreed to meet the Historic Board recommendations on the shutters and the windows and the doors, that allows them to go for the tax credits, the federal tax credits, to help make those improvements, as well as they could possibly go for the city's tax exemption if they become a locally designated historic registered property.
And also, the application indicated they're going to put more money than that into it themselves, so, and they would have to, in order to use the building, it would have to be up to code in every respect, so. Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Tim, I have a question for you. So we're going to, the idea is to transfer funds from one account to this account, 27,000,
Well,
a little more.
well, you have this item and the next item, and we have $62,000, of which they're asking, this item is asking for $40,000,
Okay.
and the next item is asking for $50,000. So there is insufficient funds to handle both of these. So technically, there is sufficient funds for this, which leaves $20-some thousand left,
Yeah.
but there would be insufficient funds for the next one. So that's why there's the need for a $27,000 budget amendment, which is indicated in this one as well as the following item. And it's also on council's agenda tonight if you so approve of that way of doing it.
So where are we going to be short 27,000?
It is, we're not going to be short, we'll be short, well, I guess actually we'll be short in our cash balance or the, I don't want to say reserve, but undesignated fund balance.
Okay.
So we have funds that we need to appropriate.
We didn't budget for it, but we have sufficient funds to cover it. So what we'll do is we'll do a budget amendment before City Council at the next meeting, if you approve this, to go ahead and do the budget amendment, which would increase your budget in CRA for $27,000.
Okay.
So there would be funding available for,
There is funding
Both.
available. Yes, sir.
just want to be clear.
Let me ask one other question if I can. Sorry. Sorry, Sarah. So if somebody else comes forward and asks for a grant, then we're out.
We are out of funds, so that would be something maybe at the next meeting we will bring back to the board as to what we want to do with those other, I'm trying to get the correct, the other available funds that we have that are basically just,
Hanging out there.
right.
One way to put it.
So, yeah, one way of putting it. So how much do we have hanging out there? Approximately.
Well, if you,
Available.
budget here, but there's like 198,000.
Okay. The mayor has suggested unavailable, or available.
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 You know, on our budget.
Yeah.
I don't have it in front of me right now. I know I have it, but it was approximately 198,000, and if you subtract, and I think it's on the next budget item, $198,304 available
Okay,
to get the 27,000 out of.
okay, okay, thank you.
Member Stokel?
Yep, that was actually kind of my question was, so if we were to approve both of these, we, in theory, I guess, with our existing budget, unless we pulled it from did another budget amendment, we'd have no more grant money until come next October 1st,
That is
correct?
correct.
Okay, and then when we made our CRA budget, you're saying that part of that, there was 198,000 of undesignated at that time?
Based on, yes, based on, at the last minute, we get the millage rate change, you get additional value that comes in, as well as carryovers from the previous year.
Okay.
Yeah,
so-
we do budget estimates until we get the actual state revenues in, and then whatever millage rate that the city council sets also generated more revenue.
Okay,
So we can come back to y'all next meeting and let you know what that dollar amount is and see if you would like to budget that for something in addition.
Okay, yeah, that would be
For the year
helpful.
coming up.
yeah, definitely. Okay, thank you for clarifying that for me.
Member Ball?
Quick follow-up with staff. Thank you for clarifying that the recommendations by the Historic Board are going to be accepted by the applicant, and that will be incorporated into the grant agreement, correct?
Yes, sir.
And I ask this only for clarification because I know there was some interest in the west-facing wall of this building, and certainly the whole building will benefit from the exterior redo. There's two windows that are sort of boarded up right now. Do you know what the applicant's plans are, and will that entire thing be stuccoed and painted just like the rest of the building?
Yes, in contact with the applicant, they said that they were going to fill in those windows, so they would be stuccoed. There would be no windows on that west face or the rear face of the building.
Thank you.
Member Leedy?
So these two, if we agree to fund both of these requests at the full amount, right? Then by default, we're saying we have to increase the budget.
If you want to put additional funds into grants, that's one of your options. And we can come back to you and to look at other projects in the downtown.
Well, yeah, but the point is that we're $27,000 short. If we approve the Gen Lee development and we approve the second one, then we have to, by default, agree to increase the budget because we just approved.
You don't have to. You can fund it at whatever level you want. But
Well, that's what I'm suggesting.
But
I
what
mean,
we're recommending is that since we have sufficient funds and this is a good project, that we go ahead and fully fund it with the budget amendment.
Correct me if I'm wrong, that if we do approve it, then it will go to council.
Yeah,
to change
that's what
the
I mean.
budget.
Then the council has to approve that budget
Or
amount,
not.
right? Okay. And that's kind of like not too much of a surprise because during the budget time, you said you felt there was going to be more money based on the millage and revenue. Isn't that right? That's on the record, right?
Yes, sir. And
Okay.
we said we would, depending on the amount, we would come back to council and you could look at appropriating those funds.
Okay. Thank you.
CRA, I should say.
Member Barringer?
Thank you, sir. So in the interest of full disclosure, I want to make sure, I'm going to be recusing myself from this item because I was related to a business that had dealings with the landlord. But I would make myself available for informational purposes only, if I can help answer any questions related specifically. I'm intimately familiar with the property, so.
Member Nelson?
Well, when we did our budget, we talked about sidewalks and some fill-in of the sidewalks downtown, maybe going between the downtown and the river and some other infill kind of things. So before we give all our money away, or give part of our money away,
Take part of our money.
part of our money away, it would be, to me, it would be good to proportionally give it the money we have to these two individuals, and then look at some of the other projects that we really wanted to see downtown before we start spending additional money. That's just my thought.
I'm going to comment on that. We would only be looking for the amount of money,
The 27,000.
27,000.
Correct.
We have additional monies that
Correct.
can be transferred over for those other projects, so. And I will tell you, I did, well, when we get to the second one, I'll tell you.
Okay.
All right,
Because some of, and I just say that because some of those projects were more expensive than I would have imagined. The
Yes.
sidewalks were, I forgot how much sidewalks were.
Well, we have 40-some thousand, 41,000 from the CRA in the budget right now. But I think at the time it came through, it was like $200,000 for sidewalk infill, of which we funded 41,000. So that leaves another 160,000, which to complete them all. At least that was what I, in researching back to the meetings we had talking about the budget.
Yeah. And then we were talking about parking and doing some road improvements. And what I recall was they were pretty pricey. So just saying.
Thank you. Member Stokel?
Do we have any idea, like an estimated number of how much we're expecting to be able to allocate when you come back to us with the additional revenue we have, or no?
It will depend on what you do tonight,
Okay,
based on this, the next one, and then I believe with the courtyards.
okay.
So,
I guess my take on it, I do think it would just be that 27,000, and I think both of these are great. I'm glad to see that people are doing things with the downtown area, I guess I should say. I think that's one thing that we have a lot of people coming, hey, are you guys coming? So to me, I'm glad that there are, two people that are coming up trying to do something. So I'm okay with both projects as they are now, so.
Okay. Member Diesel?
I guess I'm going to digress back to Tom's original point. He and you guys probably know the history of that property better than I. It was not going to make it, and it was going to be knocked down. That tells me it was probably in pretty bad shape. But we are guaranteed that this is not a problem, and we've checked it out and said it's worthy of this.
I don't know if it's guaranteed, but we do have the applicant here that would be better versed to speak about it than probably myself.
That would be a good idea.
Let me take one more.
Well, let me go one step further, because if we can be guaranteed of that, if we are, and and of course I like that word guarantee in this instance, but if we can be guaranteed of that, I think this is exactly what CRA, as you read this, the Commercial Beautification Program allows the use of community CRA grants to do this type of thing. So this is something that, when I first read this and I'm, looking at this is exactly what we're supposed to be doing, enhance the downtown, give grants to those who are wanting to enhance the downtown. More than one meeting, we have concerns about the buildings we need to knock down, we need to do this, we need to do that. They're trying to do something with this building. I think these funds are what should do that. I just want to make sure, because that part wasn't in here and I wasn't hearing that until Tom mentioned that. I just need to know we're okay, and if we're going to go forward and it's going to be fine, this is what we're supposed to do in my mind.
I'll comment on that. In the application, there was an indication of a great deal more money going into it. And again, I checked with city staff, and the building will have to meet code to be used. So that's pretty much of a guarantee. I don't think they want to paint the building and then walk away.
And again, this is me making sure, because I'm not familiar with that. I haven't seen it over the years, and some of the people who've been down there maybe think, well, it can meet code, and then next thing you know, one of the pillars comes down. I don't know. I'm just simply saying that what I'm really getting at is I think this is what we're supposed to do. I like this idea. We've talked so much about, let's tear this building down, that building down, and I'm all for doing what we got to do in that area if need be. But this is a proactive move, using the CRA, grants the way they should be used. So just making sure we're okay.
Thank you, sir. Member Leedy.
Going just back to Member Nelson's question, didn't we have money left over from last year's budget? That was the amount of money that we didn't spend.
Carry forward.
Carry
Yeah,
over.
the carry forward, that's part of the 198,000. That makes up a portion of that, yes.
Okay. And then we talked about how you think there might be more revenue from the millage rate and blah, blah, blah. So there's an opportunity, I mean, there's a probability here that we would not have to go into any other budget line items, sidewalks and stuff, because we've got carryover and we've got possibly more revenue coming. Is that true?
Well, true to a point. That has already happened as of October 1st. The 198,000 is the total of what you just said. So there isn't any more coming in. That's what came in at that time.
What's
I think
budget-
what you're asking, sir, is are we going to have to cut something to pay for this? No,
That's right.
We're not.
That's what I'm trying
Yep,
to ask.
we have sufficient funds.
And the other funded things that we did a couple months ago are still going to be funded, right?
That's correct, sir.
Okay, that's what thank you.
And what we'll do, we'll come back to you with whatever you guys decide tonight with that, and we'll come back next meeting and start discussing what you would like to do with the additional revenue.
Well, if that's the case, then I agree with Member Stokel and Member Diesel that this is exactly what we should be doing, and I'm supporting this. Fully funded for both of them.
Member Ball.
Likewise, I support it, and I looked at the budget numbers too, as you all did, and I wasn't part of putting this budget together, but I will probably offer some thoughts as we go through the evening about balancing things, and so this is the first one out of the chute, and therefore we're having this dialogue, but there are two other items tonight that could affect that. And I would say, just to the chairman's point, and it may be well to hear from the applicant, that this is incentivizing private sector investment. And my understanding is that this owner is making this investment with, seeking our incentive to up it so that building can be marketed for a tenant to come in. So just though we can't probably guarantee that something won't happen to it, I mean, we can hear about that. We don't guarantee that it won't, and it can sit there looking like it is for a lot more years, empty. So it's nothing in life is for sure. But I would say that we could get clarification on that point of the structural issue, if you want, and then we can move on.
Would the applicant like to speak?
I know there was two of us, so.
I guess I was the first one to bring it up. All I want to do is, I'm sure you've had the people go in there and look at it and analyze it, and you're not going to try to even seek this grant if you didn't think it was going to be successful. I just want to make sure we get that perhaps said at this meeting, make me
Right.
feel better about it.
Yes.
So give me that.
She did. She said yes.
Well, she said yes.
Yeah, we wouldn't be going to this point if that was the case. So, we plan on doing some improvements inside, which I was made aware that I guess there's grant money for that as well. So I'm hoping to try to utilize that also. But this was the first thing. This was the first part, getting the outside
All right, perfect.
improved.
Because, again, what I would say, before I knew you were the applicant, is that is exactly what I feel like we're here to do. This kind of grant, incentivize somebody like you to come in and, do these things. And again, instead of talking about tearing down a building, we're talking
Yeah.
about improving and renovating a building. And I appreciate that very much.
Thank you, we're trying.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mr. Altoff, did you want to make another comment?
I just wanted to say that I'm in favor of the grant with the assurance that the building is structurally sound, as it's been
Absolutely.
said here. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll take a motion on this, if anybody would like to make it.
Move to approve the award of a commercial beautification grant in the amount of $40,000 to Larry Rhodes.
Second.
Redevelopment.
I have a motion and a second from Member Ball. Any other comments? I see none. All those in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Like sign. Passes with member, sorry, Matt Barringer. Abstaining. All right, passes. Next item, please.
Commercial interior renovation grant for
One
property.
second, did you have your light on?
I just wanted to clarify, based on the discussion, that the applicant understand that that's contingent on the appropriation and change in the budget. Otherwise, as you stated, if this budget is not approved and the appropriations made, you're likely to come back and readdress the amount that's awarded.
It's likely, however, at this point, based on the conversation. Okay. Next item, sir.
Commercial interior renovation grant for the property located at 300 and 310 South Washington Avenue. Attached for the board's review is an application for an additional commercial interior renovation grant from Barry Hamilton, Launch Now LLC, to assist in the renovation of the buildings located at 300 and 310 South Washington Avenue with electric, plumbing, HVAC, ADA, and fire suppression code upgrades. The applicant obtained a commercial interior renovation grant on 12 June 2017 from the CRA for $50,000 for electric, plumbing, HVAC, ADA, and fire suppression upgrades, contingent on the application acquiring the property and obtaining the property insurance. The grant agreement was executed on 27 July 2017 after the applicant closed on the property. On 14 August 2018, the CRA revised the commercial interior renovation grant program to provide up to an additional $50,000 of grant funding for mixed-use projects, including non-residential uses and residential living units, to incentivize such projects. The applicant has been working on the site since approximately the first day of the year, during which structural issues have come to light that have dramatically increased the cost of the renovation to approximately $5 million from the original estimate of $2.8 million. Electric, plumbing, HVAC, and fire suppression are estimated to cost $1.4 million plus. Due to the increased cost of the renovation of the buildings, the applicant is requesting additional $50,000 of commercial interior renovation grant. Staff requests approval of the commercial beautification grant reimbursement funds in the amount of $50,000 by Barry Hamilton Launch Now LC for electric, plumbing, structural, HVAC, ADA, and fire suppression work to his existing buildings located at 300 and 310 South Washington Avenue, with 75% of the grant, or $37,500, to be paid at the project completion, and the remaining 25% of the grant, $12,500, to be paid the first year of the occupancy after the completion of the improvements. And staff is available to answer any questions that CRA board may have.
Council, any questions? Clerk, are there any cards on this item?
Yes, sir. One card, Tom Altiff.
Sir?
Tom Altiff, 410 South Hopkins, Titusville. Good evening again. I'm, as with the other grant, I'm 100% in favor of this grant. The downtown merchants have authorized me to say that they support it 100% as well. I think we're going to get a lot of benefit from this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And I will also comment that I attended an NBEDZ meeting, and the price of the cost of what they're doing over there, as he just said, as the city manager said, that has gone up exponentially. And they did receive some funding there, and I personally feel it would be a very good idea to us help them along too. They're footing a great deal more than they're asking. So, Member Leedy.
I mean, if you're ready, I'd be glad to make a motion to
Anybody?
approve this award.
Well, I have one other person commenting, if you will hold that for a moment. Member Barringer.
Thank you. Yeah, and this one I can speak to. So as the CRA will move forward with these projects ongoing, I think that some of the things to consider, the structural soundness needs to be weighed significantly, and here's why. Years ago, we I think successfully did a tremendous job as a city. This is in previous CRAs of getting the facades to look different and look upgraded. And so I think previous CRAs did a very good job with that in the downtown area. And so basically you got the lipstick on it and you got some of the structural stuff done on the outside that was good. And then changes were made to the grant funding to be inclusive of those inside changes as well. So the wiring and stuff and so on, with the idea that when you've got wiring that if you touch will kill you because it hasn't been upgraded for that long, that's a big deal and probably needs to go. And it's so cost prohibitive that it's not worth the investment. So keeping that in mind. But the other one is the historical significance of the building. So as an example, if a building was not structurally sound, barring a historical significance, I would rather see it dropped and put up if it's going to be a comparable amount of money. This one, on the other hand, I have full faith is structurally sound. We've been cranking on this one, chipping away at it for years. And what I think the money's going to relative to the inside, rewiring, splitting, and that there's economic development draw, and that's the big one, is that there will be more people coming to the downtown to use the service that is being built, I think is qualitative measures that when we look at these projects moving forward, like those are maybe some of the identifiable outcomes we're looking for, not just it looks better. Because if it just looks better and we're not really into it for the historical significance, then structure could be a serious problem in some of the buildings in the downtown area. So I fully support it, and I just hope to pass that along. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And again, going back to that meeting, all of those points were covered, and a local builder who, Lloyd Construction, had all of the details in there. And I'm pleasantly surprised by the fact that the people that are doing this and want to do this are willing to go forth with it. They have a penchant and have done this before with other buildings, so it's not new to them. They understand they understood what they were getting into, not quite to the extent that they were going to get into it, but they're not backing away from it. And I think that takes a lot of courage. And I also believe, as I said at that meeting, I think it's a game changer for our downtown. That building has been there, and we kind of ignore it. And the fact that it's been empty, I was in it years ago, and you wouldn't believe the inside. The outside has been worked on, certainly, but the inside is a real mess. They just didn't anticipate that it would cost that much, but they are not backing away, and I'm very much in favor of it. Ma'am, you'll have to fill a card out afterwards if you want. You can speak if you'd like. No, I'm not stopping you from speaking, please.
It's okay.
Okay. It's up to you. Okay. With that, I'll ask for a motion. Sir?
I'm not sure how to, I make a motion that we approve the award of a commercial interior renovation grant in the amount of $50,000 to Barry Hamilton, Launch Now LLC. And I guess the second part of my motion, because I'm a little bit confused, of course, it's subject to the approval of the budget amendment by the city council.
Yeah, recommending the budget amendment approval to city council.
You're recommending that budget change?
Well, not necessarily recommending, because they may say no, it's subject to approval.
This board can recommend.
I'll make the motion to, subject to the approval of the budget amendment by the city council.
Yes, sir. You as a recommending board can recommend to the city council to make that budget amendment.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
Okay.
Second.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say yes. Yes. Any opposed, like sign. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Next item, sir.
Yes, sir, we're up to 8C, design review and waivers to the downtown mixed-use zoning district regulations for the beach wave development located southwest corner of Garden Street and Indian River Avenue. The applicant, Moshe Gal, is proposing to construct a 1,680 800-square-foot building at the vacant property located at the southwest corner of Garden Street and Indian River Avenue in the DMU downtown sub-district. The building is proposed to be used for a retail store, a restaurant, a tiki bar, and an observation deck. Mr. Gal has has the property under contract pending his due diligence period, which expires mid-November 2018. The applicant is asking for specific waivers to the following criteria: the number of parking spaces, a waiver of 7 parking spaces. The applicant is requesting a waiver from the City of Titusville's stormwater requirements, which are over and above the St. Johns River Management District regulations. A waiver of 24-foot width from the frontage of Garden Street and Orange Street driveways, and a waiver of the requirement for the minimum queuing distance of 20 feet for the Orange Street driveway district. The city's design and review committee, comprised of the building official, planning manager, and city engineer, met with the applicant on 25 October and 31 October to discuss the applicant's waivers, and design review request meetings are part of your packet. The design review committee's recommendations regarding the waiver and design were unanimous for the items of parking, the St. Johns River Management District, the waiver of the city's stormwater was a vote of 2-1. The DRC's unanimously approved the request of the driveway width frontage waivers from Garden and Orange Street, and the DRC unanimously recommended approval of the 20-foot minimum queuing requirement on Orange Street. Additionally, the DRC recommended that the redevelopment planner review the recommendations of the proposed development to the CRA. It's the redevelopment planner's opinion that the proposed development, as presented to the DRC with the recommended LDR waivers, appears to be in conformance with the DMU district code and the design guidelines, and appears to be in conformance with the city's comprehensive plan and land development regulations. Staff's recommendation is that you review the design and consider the waivers to the downtown mixed-use DMU zoning district for the DMU zoning code, the comprehensive plan, and adopt the urban design manual for the proposed beach wave development. And staff's available to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions? What's your pleasure?
So I have a question for Mr. Broom. Do we need to go through these one by one and have staff provide an analysis of why we should either accept or reject it?
From the report that was just given and in your package, staff is telling you that they've met these requirements.
Okay.
If you have a specific question about whether a requirement was met, you can certainly ask questions to satisfy yourself that the requirements are met. Because when you vote to approve this, you are saying you approve their recommendations that they meet this criteria. So if there's any questions, certainly ask staff to satisfy yourself that this criteria has been met. But you do not need to do each of the criteria individually.
Okay, so if I do a motion to approve the design for beach wave development located at the southeast or southwest corner of Garden Street and Indian River Avenue, as set out in the report from staff, would that be appropriate?
I would identify the things you are varying. You don't have to go with the criteria step by step, but identify the parking spaces and how many parking spaces and the variance to the stormwater. And Tim can help you out with this.
Right, and I think you can, just like a planning and zoning recommendation, you would be based on the staff report.
Okay.
Or when you sit as council and have a zoning case, a lot of times your motions are per the staff report or based on the staff report.
Okay, then per the staff report.
Well, hold your motion for 1 second. We do have one other comment
Okay.
I'd like to hear. Member Leedy?
Yeah, I want to speak to the staff and/or, I guess, the applicant's engineers here. and this is probably only because I'd like to hear the difference, and I direct the CRA to look at page 76, number 2 on the bottom, where it reads, the DRC recommended approval with a 2-to-1 vote of granting a waiver of the city's stormwater requirements that are over and above the St. John's Water Management District stormwater requirements. It is determined that the requirements are the same. The concern of the staff voting no, member, I suppose that should be read, voting no was the proximity to the lagoon of the proposed project and the possible impacts of stormwater on surface water quality. I think for the last 6 months, even probably longer, we've all heard concerns about our lagoon. And I think I'd like to just ask a question to take a minute to find out, what does this mean? It seems to me what you're saying here is you're going to use the St. John's standard and not the city's, but I still don't know what that means. And I know that a lot of people have said, wait a minute, what are we dumping into the river? It's a great project. I agree with all the other waivers, but I just want to hear, to my satisfaction, what we're doing with this stormwater.
I will begin, and then I'll probably defer to the engineers in the audience, both the two that I have behind me plus the applicants. But at the DRC meeting, it was determined that there is what they call a positive outfall. And by having a positive outfall, having somewhere for that water to drain to, the St. John's requirements and the city requirements are one and the same. So the city's is not more stringent than St. John's in this case. So if you follow St. John's, you should be following the city's requirements and vice versa. And some of the engineers, I don't know if Mr. Kerbach or KB can expand on that, but the intent is that they would still have to meet the St. John's requirements, which would be the same as the city's. They're most likely going to have to put a baffle box or a nutrient filter system on the property.
Well, why are we asking for a waiver then if they're the same?
Because they're exactly the same, and I think the applicant would be better versed to answer this question, but what we were told is that since they're the same, they'd prefer just to deal with one agency instead of two agencies.
Wait. Member Lady, anything else?
Well, I would rather like to ask an engineer the question, because if that's possible.
It is certainly.
How you doing? I'm Andy Kerbach with Morgan & Associates, 504 North Harbor City Boulevard in Melbourne, Florida. I'm the civil engineer, and we looked at the drainage basin that's draining there. We looked at the stormwater criteria. We met numerous times with KB. We also discussed it at length with KB, and we also discussed the stormwater system with the St. John's. The criteria that the city of Titusville has is that it needs to meet the St. John's criteria, which is what we plan on doing. That may be achieved by a couple different ways, which is providing retention and filtration system. They call it basically an upflow filter. We don't know that exactly of how that we're going to do that, but that's what our plan is. As far as what Tim said, we really only want to deal with one agency. We want to deal with the St. John's, because if your criteria is the same, we want to just kind of streamline that process and go through the St. John's review.
Okay, I guess my question then is, this is a real sensitive subject. Mm-hmm. And what you've told me is we don't know, not sure, and maybe we got to, I don't want to walk out of here tonight and half of my friends come up and start telling me, I just put a lot of stormwater in there and because you told me it was the same. Well, now, there's got to be a difference because you're asking for a waiver. Now, does the city have a higher standard than the St. John's, or?
If you read if you read the ordinance, it says there is a higher standard in the ordinance if you don't have a positive outfall. We have a positive outfall. There were some discussions about the original drainage patterns there, and we've been going through this process for about 2 months. Originally, the city staff actually told us that we could not have to provide any stormwater treatment at the site, but we found that that wasn't really the case because Spaceview Park is part of a overall drainage basin. So with that initial indication that we didn't have to provide any stormwater treatment, and then now we do have to meet the criteria because we met with the St. John's, we've reviewed the old calculations. We feel like the best route for us is to provide what is really required by the code, which is meet the St. John's criteria, and that's what we're asking for. And we're not asking for anything else. We're asking to meet the St. John's criteria, which is in your code.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Member Stokel?
Yeah, so my question may be more for staff then, because I'm kind of getting hung up on, because on this it says on item 2, the applicant is requesting a waiver to the City of Titusville stormwater requirements that are over and above the St. Johns River water. So if we can clarify that a little bit so we know, because when you read that, it seems like our requirements are more, so anything to help, that would be useful.
Good evening, I'm KB Ofosu, City Community Development Engineer. So the way our code is written is that if they meet St. John's criteria, they would have met our minimum standard. We do have additional requirements above and beyond, but they are not applicable in all cases. So one example, as Mr. Kerbach mentioned, was that if a legal positive outfall could not be found for the site, then they would have to retain a 100-year event on their site. That would not be applicable in this case. Another example would be if they were to put in a wet pond, they would have to provide additional geotechnical soil testing data to support that. And another example I can give is the code states that the primary stormwater treatment system cannot be, for example, the baffle boxes and bioswales, for example, as they're proposing, unless it is part of and supplementary to a primary system. So in this case, for example, their primary treatment is being proposed to be some baffle box, nutrient box type of system. So that would be an example of where they would have to go above and beyond St. John's. However, in terms of the performance requirements of the system, for example, the amount of discharge cannot exceed the amount of discharge before the project. The time of the peak discharge out of the project cannot exceed the pre-development condition, and the volume of discharge can also not exceed in the pre-development condition. Those performance measures, they would still have to meet all of those, and that is part of the St. John's requirements and also part of ours as well. So, so to answer your question, yes, there are some elements in our code that go above and beyond, but in this specific case, they would not be applicable. So
to clarify,
Sorry,
I wasn't.
Sorry, can I make a comment?
Yeah.
Our staff would be monitoring that situation, have to prove it?
absolutely. They will submit to St. John's their stormwater analysis calculations, et cetera, and I believe it was part of the DRC record that that will be provided to city staff as well for our review.
Member Stokel?
So I guess I'm just still a little confused. So if they wouldn't be applicable, what is the point of the waiver? So what, if, say we didn't pass this one item, what would they then be required to do? Maybe that would be a better question.
Well,
That we would require that the St. John's wouldn't.
no, so they have to meet the minimum requirements of St. John's to meet our code.
Correct.
However, the items that are above and beyond, for example, the examples I gave, those wouldn't, well, let's say they're looking for a waiver on those. So for example, you cannot have a baffle box as your primary system. That's what our code says. But then they would want a waiver on that because that's what they want to provide. And then they would still have to meet the minimum performance criteria in terms of the technical measures as to the performance of the system.
So these things would be applicable to them if they were to go by our code then?
So far, I've only found one that would be applicable, and they would still be required to meet the technical criteria.
Okay. So they'd have to come back for additional waivers if we were to not pass this one for each of those items. We couldn't just say they're not applicable because you're meeting the minimum city requirements and let them?
So at this point, they don't know. So we don't know.
Okay.
We're not 100% as to whether, for example, this additional item would be applicable or not. But even if it is, they still have to meet the performance criteria.
And we would be monitoring that.
And we will review that report, yes.
Anything else? Vice Chair?
Thank you, sir. I would maybe offer the CRA maybe some directions maybe to go with this. So one is the moment that we're talking about water, if you touch water in one thing, there's 7 other things that happen, all of which are 10 times more complicated than I understand. What I feel very confident about is that our staff, I don't know how more qualified we could get relative to the staff we have on this, to their credit. And so I feel very, very confident that, especially when I see unanimous and 2-1s and so on and so on, I feel comfortable in the direction that they are moving forward. I also hear an applicant saying, when we showed up, we didn't think there was anything there. Now there is, and now that this is an additional process. So I think that it sounds like there's a very positive working relationship in working through this. I feel totally confident that the policy that the CRA has set is being demonstrated through staff's work and the code. So I feel very comfortable with this project in and of itself to move it forward. I would offer that if it's a concern to CRA and we're looking at a comprehensive look at what does this ordinance do to outfalls, because to Member Leedy's point, citizens ask, the moment you say lagoon, there's going to be a question, and that's good. I don't feel that this project in itself is taking away anything from lagoon. I'm guessing we've got this one beat to death and interpreted appropriately, which is very positive. But I would offer that a CRA, if we want to come back and look at this not as this issue, but as a policy issue independent of this project, that would probably be our scope or our realm. So that I would say yes to the project, and then if we really have that much concern about it, then bring it back as a comprehensive issue independently. Thank you.
Member Diesel.
I would agree that number 2's, as it's written, is a little confusing, and I think the questions Member Leedy brought up were valuable. However, I think the explanation was solid. I feel fine about it, and I think it's an outstanding project. But number 2 was a little cross-worded for me, and again, I think that I'm not even sure some of it should have been written the way it was written. However, it was written that way. It's been explained. I feel good about it, and I think it's a great project.
Thank you. Member Ball?
I just want to follow on some of the comments that have been made, and it actually is not going to impact my vote on this because I think it's a good project and we should go ahead and do it. So I won't hold it up much, but maybe I'll bring it up under Executive Director's reports because I was on CRA when we went through a lot of stormwater planning, and I do think, to speak to Member Behringer's point, that we need to do a reset and a recap of just where are we in looking at, we're going to keep encountering this project after project unless we take a more regional and comprehensive view of the stormwater issues in the downtown. So I'm probably going to ask for that, but I won't do it as part of this motion.
Member Leedy?
I agree. My final comments on this, I'm supporting this project, and I feel actually a little bit more comfortable than from the members of the CRA who feel comfortable. But I think, I think that Matt, your comments and the comments that you just made is absolutely right on the money. I mean, it's not only progressively looking forward at this issue, but it also gives guys like these that are in front of us, gives them surety that they don't have to come and ask for waivers and based on policy that, so I would hope that the staff would get into that, delve into that, and let's revisit that. Thank you.
I will also comment that I think it's a great project, and I think this discussion was well worth having, and I took note of the engineer going like this to everything everybody said, so I think he agrees that we should come back and make it a little bit clearer as to what to do. But on this particular one, if you would like to continue and add whatever so you would like.
So I think the motion would stand. I just think we're just looking for a second.
Okay.
Don't make me do that over again.
I was just giving you opportunity if you wanted to change something, but that's fine.
No.
Okay, it stands as is. Okay, and I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say yes. Yes. Any opposed, like sign? Passes unanimously. That was easy. Next item, please.
Item 8D, on 30 August 2018, the city solicited proposals for the CRA courts decorating painting under RFP 18B046. Four firms out of 181 that were notified obtained the RFP documents. The city received one proposal from Phoenix Rising that was opened on to October 18. The purpose of the request was to brand and place make the courtyard space, introduce color, and provide an invitation for spectators to become part of the downtown Titusville experience. Two concepts were provided, one with nature and space and one with animals. The cost of the two courtyards combined is $71,700. The Nevins courtyard was $34,360, and the Julia courtyard mural was $37,340. The cost of the murals is in line with other murals in the downtown area, such as the murals on Kayak by Bose and the North Brevard Historical Society. The CRA is being asked for its input and approval of the two themed pavement murals and border colors for the downtown courtyards. If the CRA approves the courtyard decorative pavement painting and themes, it is recommended the CRA approve an additional, the city council approve an additional budget amendment and award the contract to Phoenix Rising LLC of Winter Garden in the amount of $71,700 for the CRA courtyard's decorative painting and authorize the mayor to execute the contract.
I'd like to make the first comment. That's awfully expensive. What we need is something bright and painted. I don't think the artwork, which I don't think, excuse me, no. The artwork, which evidently is a good amount of the expense of this, would really be worth it, because that's not what the use of that particular area, those particular areas are. So that's my feelings. Member Diesel.
And that's where I was going to. That's awful expensive with the things we want to get done down there. You know, we've talked about a bunch of them. We've talked about parking. We talked about some other things. City manager, remind me, for the record, how many bids did we get on this?
Just one. We had four. We put 181. We had 4 people pick up the packet, and we had 1 apply.
And then the only thing I could add to that is, outside of being opposed to this amount for this project, would be to send it out for a rebid, and that's the only thing I know to do, but I'm not in favor of that amount.
With some more conditions in the application, I guess.
Sure, we could tighten it up. I will tell you, we've had to rebid several contracts. Everybody's working right now. It's real hard to get people to bid on work.
Understood.
And this in scope, if you de-scope it, and I agree with you, I think the amount's outrageous, but if you de-scope it, you're making it even smaller, so the likelihood of somebody bidding on it would be even less.
I should add, I think they're outstanding. The pictures I see are incredible. They're great until I got to the part where it was $71,000. So that's just a concern. I couldn't go that way.
Member Nelson.
And then it said a 1-year warranty. So, yeah, I was like, oh my God, $35,000 for each courtyard, and we have it for a year. So my vote would be to send it back and try to get additional bids on it, or rebid it.
So if you do want to rebid it, the mural concept itself was, like you said, it was good art and everything, but perhaps we could look at just putting colors or something within the courtyard just to brighten it up, kind of
Sure.
like what we did at the splash park.
Basic design.
Member Ball.
Actually, and I know I wasn't part of putting the budget together, so forgive me, but aside from sticker shock, I would say I am for art in the downtown, and we're seeing some great art being done, largely through private investments. And so, to me, I had a durability question, I had the price question, and I really had to think about what's the opportunity cost of this $71,000, and exactly what has already been mentioned came to my mind. You know, where can that $71,000 have the broadest impact and be enabling and incentivizing? And in my mind, I come back to, a project like sidewalk infill that's intended to generate a more pedestrian-friendly downtown, walkable community. Lots of people would be able to enjoy that. And it would extend the impact of our resource expenditures beyond just Nevins Court and Julia Court. And then the second thing I would consider, without wanting to be prescriptive about it, is we discussed two great grants this evening, and without digging too far into cash reserves, it might indeed provide additional funds that could be used for more grants. So I'm just going to say I can't support the project, period. I would not necessarily encourage rebid, because we're going to have the same conversation at half the price as we are at $71,000. And is there a better way to spend the money? I'm sorry, but that's my view on it.
It's pretty much everybody's feeling, so you don't have to be sorry. Member Stokel.
Yep, he pretty much just said everything I was thinking. I would be open to rebidding if it was just colors, in my opinion, and if the price was significantly lower. And I guess we just don't know because we only got this one bid. So I'd be open to the rebid process to see what we get back if we get multiple bids. But again, if it's significantly higher than we're anticipating, I would agree with Member Ball. I wouldn't want to kind of go down that path. But I do like the color. I like seeing our downtown. I love the shade structures. I love what's happening down there, so.
Member Leedy.
Nope. I agree with them.
Okay.
I wouldn't rebid it either.
Around.
I mean, we'll have the same, I would do like you mentioned to the executive director, something like Splash Park. I mean, look, let's come up with something else with it.
Member Nelson.
Well, I agree with Member Ball. We're going to have to come back. We're going to discuss what else we want to do downtown. So let's just skip on that right now and decide what things we want to see first, second, last, and decide if we want to do this kind of project at that time. I mean, is great, but we got the shade structures down there. They're doing the uplights, which should make it really pretty. And just wait and see what we want to do with it.
Member Diesel.
I agree with the not rebidding, that's fine. I also feel, it's been my experience with what I've done, a rebid never hurts because it's no skin off our nose. But the other thing is you can also rescope what you're bidding. I don't think you necessarily need to, die on the project because we didn't like this and it's too much money, so forget it the rest of the path. We all like the art, we like the color, but we can't just sit here and not do anything and hope that gets done. However, another idea might be interacting and contacting the high school art classes who have done some tremendous things. I can speak to Titusville High School, have done some tremendous things with such kind of colors and art, ceramic tile and things like that, and I'm sure astronauts equally sound in that art. I think that's kind of a good way to get, you know, the high school kids involved in the downtown and take some pride in that area. So if you wanted to talk EFSC, maybe that as well. But I can speak to the Titusville Art Department who gets involved in that kind of thing on campus. I think it might make them feel just a little bit better, get involved in something down here in the downtown.
Member Ball.
For staff, if we don't approve this and therefore we don't commit the $71,000, does that alleviate the need for a budget amendment on the
Yeah,
other?
that's correct, sir.
Okay. So that would take up the $27,000 that we were over on those and still provide, quick math, 48,000 thereabouts.
160.
You would be 17604, subtracting the 198, the 27.7. I come out with $170,604.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is the 71,000 was included in the budget numbers.
No.
That was not?
It
Okay.
would have been a budget amendment to do that. That would have come out of that additional funds.
Okay. Well, I'm happy to make a motion if you all are ready to,
If you will hold
Okay,
that, and I'll
sure.
come back to you on that, because we have the Vice Chair.
Thank you. Three things. One was, I believe the gentleman who did the bid, I don't know if there are any cards on the issue, sir, but
I'm going to ask
my
that in a
apologies.
minute.
Thank you,
Okay.
sir. So one, I would just be interested to hear about how that was arrived at. I'm not in agreement to where we're at with this bid, but so that's one. One, I want to hear the comments, how we got there. Two, if the pricing is in line with other murals that are in existence, X amount of dollars per X foot, then I don't know necessarily if this is out of line for a mural, if that's what we're shooting for. Again, I would probably come back to the CRA to take a look at comprehensively what plan are we trying to develop in regards to art in the downtown. So as an example, if we have 4 private entities that have done very large murals and there's a consensus from multiple people that that is a direction our town is going, then there may be some validity of paying that amount of money for a mural if that is the consensus of the public and that's what we're really trying to accomplish. On the other hand, if it's painting traffic light boxes and that's where we're going to spend our money for art, then that's what we're going to do. But I would just, one project I get, but there is something to be said for the ones that already exist. And what's the city's role in that in helping leverage or achieve that goal? As an example, with those other murals, was there city funding that went to it? I don't believe so in the other murals. I can't remember off the top of my head. So if it was all private funding, then possibly as a city, if we're talking about, because the courtyard is just about a finished project, it would be nice to cross it off the list and say mission complete if there is a way to leverage with that private partner of the building in order to improve the outside of that building. So I just think there's different ways to work the widget, and as a CRA that we could look at what are we trying to achieve in art in the downtown area. And I think it would help make a decision like this, not an independent decision, but one part of a comprehensive plan. So that would be my suggestion. Thank you.
I see no further lights, but I do want to comment that I'm a little hesitant on not going out for bids because bids take a while to get them done. The city manager said he could tighten it up a great deal, and we could still look outside to see if some private entity or business would like to do a mural in that and maybe designate an area for that specific thing. Are you comfortable with making that sort of bid, or does it cause a?
I think I would need to get a little bit of direction on, when I say tighten it up, what my thought was, and it's just mine, and I need your guys' guidance. We did do color, the splash park was a theme of a fish, as you recall, and then the different color schemes and palettes were designed by somebody to put that together.
Mm-hmm.
Our thought was just to try to put some kind of color into the downtown area, thus the shade structures and other things. And this was another portion of that because the shade structures at the splash park and the colorization in the park itself make it very appealing. So that was our intent of going out. And then we do have the murals that were within the city, so it does match the theme that we were seeing throughout.
Well, I personally would be very happy with that, and I would be happy with getting the job done rather than postponing it again, and then maybe something else happens down the road. So I think, who was it that was going to make the motion that I asked?
Before you do that, could we maybe spend a little time with the Downtown Merchants Association and get some of their feedback as to what they would like to see in the courtyard, since it's primarily their area, and talk to the business owners that are abutting those to get some feedback from?
I see no problem with that, other than it is a month, but we can afford that. Do you have a card in, sir? Is there a card? I'll let you speak, but you'll have to fill out a card afterwards, if you will.
Hello, CRA. My name is Joshua McKnight. I'm with Phoenix Rising LLC in Winter Garden, Florida. When we put this package together, it was clear to us that the city of Titusville was seeking out to bring some, like you said, to splash some color into the downtown area, which I think is a fantastic idea. Now, I completely understand the sticker shock. I understand that the city funds are, very important, and they are delegated to specific areas to improve the city. So I definitely agree with all your points in that the funds may be utilized in better ways. However, when we created this proposal, the design that went into it and the concepts and the materials that we proposed were an attempt to provide something that would make an impact culturally, something that would have some kind of visual impact where people would be drawn to the area to come and see something that is talked about or has that kind of cultural impact and can be spread around and bring attention to the area in that way. Now, we weren't exactly clear on what our budgetary limitations were when we submitted for this, so I completely understand the sticker shock again. I would like to say that we are completely willing to bring this back and submit a bid for it with that in mind, if that's something that you guys are going for. I know that it was discussed that we may just tank this project altogether to use those funds somewhere else, and I respect that decision as well. But I would like to make that comment that we are absolutely capable to go back to the design board and simplify it to meet those budgetary limitations. That was
Do that, of course, he can bid as part of the process, which I think I'd prefer seeing, frankly. It will be up to council, but you're welcome to come back and bid, but it would be part of the next bid.
The rebid process.
Right.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on this issue? Not seeing anybody. Motion, sir?
All right, let me try to frame this so it's not overly prescriptive on staff. So my motion will be to reject the conceptual decorative pavement design and project that has been put before us tonight. And that motion will also include direction to staff to come back with, not necessarily proceed immediately with a rebid, but to come back to this body with some options on where those resources could be distributed in perhaps a more balanced way from my perspective, and not to preclude the possibility of an art project in the courtyards, but also not to prescribe that we must do it.
Second.
I have a motion and a
It's a long
second.
one.
Does that work?
I think we are going to come back to you the next meeting with the remaining 170,000 and some recommendations on how to use that. So what I heard is don't necessarily kill this, but put it somewhere or take a look at de-scoping it and maybe coming up with a different dollar amount?
Yes, for
Okay.
for us to give you, the green
Sure.
light to go put out.
Yeah,
You comfortable?
got it.
Okay. All right, we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, like sign? Passes unanimously. Next is petitions and requests from the public. Is there anybody that would like to speak on anything at this point? Mr. Altiff?
Tom Altiff, 410 South Hopkins, Titusville. I had an opportunity to review the executive director's report when a survey was done of the vacant downtown buildings. And one of them stood out in particular, and I'll just read it quickly. It says, "The property has a building in poor shape that most likely needs to be torn down. It is probably not cost-effective to renovate the building. Potential buyers have considered using the property as a used car lot, but zoning requirements and associated costs to build a car lot have deterred buyers and lessees. Inexpensive rent is wanted by lessees. The city should buy the property and turn it into a parking lot." If the building is in such poor shape that it needs to be torn down, why is it still standing?
I'm not quite sure which building you're talking about, sir.
Oh, I think we can determine what building this is, and staff has the name of the property owner because they took the survey.
Sir, I don't know which building you're talking about. If you'd like to disclose it, that's fine.
Well, I suspect it's the service station right next to City Hall. But staff can answer that question.
That was the gray building here just to the south of City Hall.
And what is your
Well, my
to the
question is, part of CRA's function is to demolish blight. That building is blight. And if the owner admits that the building needs to be torn down, why isn't the CRA actively pursuing having that building demolished?
We can't demolish a private building if it...
You can, under the authority of that ordinance that created the CRA. We've been through this before.
Yeah, and our purpose, sir, I disagree with you, is not always to demolish buildings. Obviously, most of the money we spend is to renovate buildings.
Correct.
So,
But the owner should demolish the building. He has an obligation to do that. I mean, what is the purpose of the CRA? If it's not to do something about blight, is it just
Sir,
come
we
here
are
and
doing
hand
that.
out grants?
Let's talk about this specific thing, because you're
Yes.
getting out in the ether.
Let's talk about it.
Okay. It's a privately owned building. To my
Yes.
knowledge, it meets code. It may not be pretty, but it meets code. It's up to the owner if he wants to sell it or not. He has not approached us, to my knowledge. He had a plan for that building at one time, and for whatever reason, it didn't meet the downtown designation as to what should be done with a building like that, to increase the looks. We're doing what we're supposed to do, to make it cohesive in the area.
So what you're telling me, sir, is that building is not blight?
I didn't say that. I said the owner is not come and said he wanted to sell it. We could pursue a price on it if that'll solve your problem, but I'm not, we have no ability to knock it down because we don't like the way it looks. How would you like it if somebody
But
did
you
that
did.
to your house or the buildings you have?
We've had this discussion before.
Yeah, you
And the city attorney stated that there is a process for demolishing the building.
But the building, there has to be something wrong with it. We can't knock down a new building, or a building that meets code, or doesn't meet your idea of what it should look like.
So you don't consider the building to be blight?
I didn't say that.
But
What
that's
I
what you're-
consider is not
No,
at
that's
issue
what-
here.
that's what
It
the
is what we
CRA
are allowed and not allowed
That's
to
what the
do.
CRA is charged with.
Excuse me, sir, may I reference the city attorney? City attorney, can we just knock down a building?
I'm not saying just knock it down.
I'm
There's legal
questioning the
procedures.
city attorney, please.
There's legal procedures.
Mr. Altiff.
As stated, there is a process for redevelopment. And if this board is interested in us looking at that building and providing you options and reaching out to that property owner, and we can certainly investigate that building.
I said that.
Yeah,
We can go to them and see if they want to sell.
If this
But we
board is
can't go and knock
interested
it down. Go ahead, please.
So if this board, as and a majority of this board is interested in that property for some reason, and there's a public purpose behind either tearing that building down or other purposes for that building, we can certainly investigate if that's this board's direction. But we haven't been provided that direction.
So you conduct the survey, but you don't take any steps to proceed with it? I don't understand.
Obviously.
No, obviously you don't understand what you're charged with.
Okay.
Read the ordinance. The ordinance is very clear.
Sir, property rights is very clear to me.
Yes, and the ordinance specifically talks about blighted properties and demolition. Now, if the CRA is not going to take the actions that they're charged with, perhaps the CRA should no longer be in existence.
Sir, I would only say to you that blight is like beauty in the eyes of the beholder. You may think that as a blighted building, others may not.
I don't know anyone in the city of Titusville who thinks that's
Really?
a nice building there. I can
That's
assure
a
you
different
that.
word, nice.
Or not a blight. I mean,
Okay.
just anybody who
Have you-
drives by
have
it.
you questioned
it's a
the
blight.
majority of people in the city, or
No.
put out a survey of any kind?
Well, I think perhaps the board should do that then. That should be
Thank
your
you, Mr. Alpha.
responsibility.
I'll leave it up to council what they want to do.
Well, I'd like to hear some discussion on
I
it.
think you've had your
Absolutely.
time. Was he on the timer?
Yeah, it went off.
Oh, it went off? I'm sorry. You've had your time, sir.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Council, would you like to discuss this issue?
Just for 2 seconds. Mr. Brougham, what is the definition legally of blight?
Again, blight necessarily is not black and white. I think we can bring it to you. You can discuss whether you, in your opinion, this constitutes blight. You know, we don't have the ability to exercise a sovereign, domain and take a property for blight. You know, the statutes control that. We can certainly exercise code enforcement on blighted properties. We can reach out to property owners. As a CRA, we can look at your plan and say, do we have a purpose for that building? Do we want it torn down? Why do we want it torn down? We can certainly explore properties in the CRA consistent with your plan for redevelopment and say, what do we want to do as a board? So as a board, if you want to give us direction to investigate a property, see what the purpose is you may find for that property, how that fits within your plan of redevelopment, certainly you can give us that direction.
I think
Or
that would-
code enforcement, if we believe it is a deteriorated building, is out of code compliance, certainly that can be a code enforcement action as well.
I would be curious of, the condition of the building, and are there code enforcement issues in that building?
We can certainly look into that, and staff can provide you a report on that building, and if there are code violations or not, whether or not currently any pending violations, we can report back to you.
That would be great. I'd appreciate it.
Certainly.
I would be in favor of doing both things.
Yeah.
Looking at the building, getting it examined to see what kind of shape it's in, and asking the owner if he's interested in selling it, and look at the price and consider what it's going for. What I am not in favor of is taking a personal property owned by a private individual and condemning it so that we can knock it down. There's laws against that, actually. But I see other lights here. Remember, Leedy. Member Leedy, you have your light on? Member Leedy, you have your light on, sir.
I don't want to seem to get into this middle of this, but it just seems to me, and back to this again, and it goes, this topic in general now has gone probably longer than the toilets that we were going to do years ago downtown, or in the downtown area. We've talked about talking from Matt's perspective, 8 months ago, billboards in Houston, fix your property, to Tom bringing the copy of the ordinance and passing it out, to Dan saying, we don't seem to get together, to me, as a council, to sit and say, what's the objective? What are we just keep nipping at this. And it just seems to me, I mean, it's almost getting to the point where it's not credible of what we're saying. There's properties in the downtown area that we need to take. The second one was Peggy. She did her job, sent letters out, found out what landowners are doing. We haven't responded to that. So, I mean, we can keep ignoring it, but it seems to me, in my opinion, that's the core of the CRA. That's our job. To look at these properties and see what we can do either by motivation, which we did tonight in grant programs. I don't know if the word is legal threat or legal, what Richard just said we could do. But it seems to me we need to have a program and a plan and execute on it instead of keep just beating this around because, and I finally say, and we need an hour or so to debate it.
Sir, please.
About an hour or so to debate it if we can get it on the agenda so we can talk about it. This is a very complicated subject and you're talking about property rights and all sorts of stuff. So that's my...
Member Nelson.
The other thing I would ask, did I shortcut you?
I think I hit the button too soon. I cut myself off, I think.
The other question I would have would actually be for Mr. Broom. We did talk about the Houston ordinance, what it was and what the impact was. And if we could get a report back, I think that would be helpful also. Does everybody else sort of want to hear about it? Am I the only one that wants to hear about it? Does everybody else want to hear about it?
Sure.
Yeah. At least let's look at it, let's consider it, let's read it. We might say yes, we might say no, we might say not for here, we might say legally it's not going to pass muster, but at least let's look at it.
Do you want to make that a request?
I'm making that a request.
Is there a consensus to do that? It seems to be. Okay. Member Diesel?
Knew I'd get in there. All right. I think I cut myself off, by the way. I spoke earlier about the fact that these grants are what we're all about. You know, that's what CRA is supposed to do. So I wanted to make sure that we didn't, you know, hold that up or get some paralysis with analysis on moving that forward. However, I also think, and I've said it from up here, that, you know, the other part that we do is, and again, apparently we're doing it because the report came back to say, as you pointed out, Tom, that the building needs to come down, it needs to be a parking lot. So we did the study, we did the report, now we've got to move forward with that. You know, you don't just go in with a bulldozer and knock somebody down overnight and they come back and say, what happened? There was a study, and the study gives credibility to the fact that we should move forward, and I think it's already been proposed down there to investigate that property. And you know, I have a saying with people sometimes, and certainly I said it to my players for a long time, go with the flow or you got to go. And we've given them the opportunity to go with the flow, and when you can't do that, then you got to go. I totally understand the you know, property owners. You know, I've been in some forums where that came up, and why don't we do this and why don't we do that? Well, you know, I happened to be speaking on the Constitution that day, and I said, you know, we've got this thing, the Constitution, that gives laws, and we can't just go in and knock people's stuff down. Because one of the things, you know, I said this at the forum that I ran on, was some of these empty buildings, we've got to do something about them. The more I've sat here, the more I realize there's a slow process. I wish it could be faster, but it seems to me, the first part of this meeting, we did the grant thing, and that's a good thing that we're supposed to do. In this part of the meeting, as you brought up, we had the investigation and went in there and found out, somebody said, hey, this building needs to be a parking lot. Well, now we need to focus on that building, and that's what I think we're doing. So I think there's two parts to what we do.
I agree with you exactly, and I also, you know, we've been doing CRA and we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars each year. We're doing something with that money, making things look better and so forth, so that is part of our job. We're just not able to arbitrarily say, knock that building over. Did you have, are we under petitions at this point? I can't even remember. Okay, yes, ma'am.
My name is Gretchen McMichael, 330 South Washington Avenue, McSweet's Bakery. First of all, I don't think Mr. Althoff was even indicating in any way that there'd be a line of bulldozers down South Washington. Let's get real. I do think that you have pinpointed one of the problems that we see from our side of the council is that we ask, and we ask, and haven't seen a whole lot back. We've talked about the vacant building. We had a survey with, what was it, 43% responses, something like that. We haven't heard anything back as far as what are the next steps. I'm very interested in this vacant building registry, and I would like to continue discussing it. I'm pretty sure that's what Mr. Altoff was talking about when he was talking about the building to the south of us that has been on radar for how long? No one's done anything. No one's approached the owner, I believe. No one has even discussed the possibility of approaching the owner. Now, don't get me wrong. I think that everyone has property rights, and if the owner does not want to sell, then he should do something with the property himself. But I do think that, first of all, the treatment of Mr. Altoff was not very respectful because he is trying to do what is best. And second of all, I also think that until we start getting responses, you're going to be getting this kind of attitude. So first of all, let me tell you, we are interested in what you do. We are interested in getting results, and we are interested in what happens. So please communicate with us. Don't talk at us, talk with us. I would appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
You're welcome, ma'am. Mr. Altoff and I have reached an agreement that we can argue with each other. Ma'am, ma'am, you've spoken, ma'am. And I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I do have to point out as vehemently as is put to me what the law is all about and what we see from this side of it. Now, you heard us as unanimously say we are willing to talk about this. Come to the next meeting.
You're here.
Well, great. So we've already done what you asked for. Have some time to talk about those particular situations. So Mr. Altoff, I think, accomplished what he was trying to do, not quite to the extent he wanted to do it. Thank you very much. Any other petitions and requests? Not hearing any executive director's report, sir?
Yes, sir. Information item, capital projects in the downtown update and ongoing projects for your consideration. And any questions, we're able to answer them for you.
Member Ball.
Being respectful of council's long agenda, I'm going to be very brief, but I did say I wanted to bring this up during the executive director's report that I, for one, remember the Kimley Horn study. It got completed and put on the shelf. This was about the options for area stormwater treatment facilities in the downtown. We're going to see it time and time again on individual properties, and particularly since I think that we want to incentivize and enable more development downtown, this is going to be a showstopper if we don't address it. And it's a long lead item. So what I'd like consensus on, or a motion if you feel, is I'd like to ask staff to do a recap of previous stormwater regional or area stormwater project studies that were done for the downtown district, and perhaps recommend or suggest some possible resets for how we can get that back on our radar to take some sort of action that would move it along.
Unless anybody objects, we can ask for that.
Please.
Any comments from staff? I think there's consensus to re-examine that at this point, whenever you feel it can be put on the menu and the menu on the agenda. It's my former business coming out in me. Put on the agenda, if it can be done the next meeting, because it's already there or something, that in conjunction with what we're already doing a discussion, that's fine. If not, please formulate a time. Thank you. All right. Anything else from any? Oh, we got one up. Member Leedy.
Yeah, because of time, I'd like to ask the staff, under the executive director's report, Scott, if you can put back on there my handicap issue, because we didn't get to it tonight, and I would like to talk about it.
Sure. About the temporary?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I can engage the CRA board about what I'm trying to do here. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Leedy. Anything else? Not hearing it, we, what, no, 8, no, thanks. How about 7:20? We'll give you time to whatever. I declare this meeting adjourned.